Yo, what's up guys, Grim here. So this is going to be a bit of a sequel video to the damage video, which I did last time. So if you haven't watched that yet, highly recommend doing it. It's going to cover everything you need to know in this video. So basically the purpose of this video is just to clear up a few things. There was a lot of comments in the description asking for a bit more detail. So we're going to go into that detail. We're going to give you a bit of a better example, featuring more multipliers and stuff like that. And we're going to talk about conversion in a little bit more detail and how it works. So when you get into this kind of level of PoE, you're definitely getting into the theory crafting zone, but it can be pretty useful to understand how it works. We're not going to go into super equation mode or university lecture or anything like that because I don't think that's very interesting, and it's not something I enjoy really doing either. So I'm going to explain it in layman's terms, nice and simple. Let's get into it. So first up, we're going to explain the more multiplier and how it kind of scales with each other. So let's assume we have 100 damage here, nice and simple. We're going to go to increases damage down here, which we learned about in the other videos. So basically, this is the first level of kind of damage multiplication. You're going to see it on the tree all over the place. We got 14% elemental here, and then something like 12% up here. So basically, the important thing to know about increases to damage is that it's got an additive relationship, which you'll hear quite a lot in the community. So basically what additive means is the game will check. So let's say we have these three nodes here. They're all 12%. What the game's going to do is it's going to be like, cool, additive relationship, 12 plus 12 plus 12 equals 36. And the game's going to take that 36 number and just times the appropriate damage by 36. So it would be 1.36 kind of thing. So that's really cool. Additive relationship. Let's say that we've got 5 damage nodes of 10%. That's going to equal 50%. So we're going to times our 100 here times 1.5. 150 damage. Nice and easy, nice and simple. So let's move on to more damage. So more damage is a little bit more rare in the game. You're going to find it on things like Pain Attunement, which says here 30% more spell damage. It's going to be on a lot of skill gems. Some examples are like Controlled Destruction, Elemental Focus, and Weapon Elemental Damage. Those all have more multipliers on them. So the difference between increases and more is that more is what's called a multiplicative relationship between all the modifiers. And what multiplicative means is basically, instead of, let's say we have two modifiers at 30%, so we got 30% more spell damage right there, and we've got another multiplier of more spell damage. So if this was an additive relationship, the game would take the 30% more and then add it to the other 30% more, giving us 60% more. However, this isn't how it works. It's a multiplicative relationship. And what that means is basically the following. So we're going to apply the first one here. So we've got our 150 here, sitting pretty. We're going to times it by 1.3. So that's the first one out of the way. That's 30% more spell damage or more damage, whatever you want. We've applied that. So now we get into the multiplicative relationship kind of stuff here. So what it means is if I have two lots of it, it's going to take the result from the first more spell damage, and it's going to multiply it again using the second percentage value. So here, in this example, we've got 2. So we're going to take the result from the first one, and we're going to times it by 1.3 again. So as you can see, the more damage multipliers kind of stack very well, very effectively. They don't just all add together. They kind of times by themselves. Really cool. So now you understand more damage and how it works. And when you figure out how to get as many more damage multipliers as you can, you're going to be very powerful and you're going to get a lot of damage out of that. So that's really cool. Next up, we're going to talk about conversion. It's a little bit complicated, but I'm going to simplify it for you. So basically in the game, there's going to be a lot of things which say gain additional physical damage as blah, or convert this damage to that damage and all that stuff. So basically all you need to know is that the game will follow a certain order when it's converting damage. So when you look at something like this, dagger here, gain 38% of physical damage as extra cold and 40% as extra lightning. It's really important to note that the game needs to follow an order when it's doing this. So basically what I mean by that is the game has kind of a sequence in which it does stuff. So to start off with, it's going to look at physical damage, and it's going to say what conversion modifiers do I have for physical damage. So let's say we have 2. Let's say we have 40% of fizz as lightning. And we got 40% of fizz as cold. So why is that 50? Let's change it to 40. Nice. Let's say we have 100 physical damage. So that's really cool. So let's do that calculation now. So we got 40% of our physical is lightning. So we're going to get 140. So we're just going to get 40 lightning. And we'll actually do the little calculation here so that we look cool and smart. So we got 40 damage there. And we got some cold damage as well. So we're going to times that by 0.4 as well. We got some cold damage there. So that's how that works. We start off with physical. So then let's say we have 20%. Well, actually, we'll do 10%. 10% of our lightning as cold. Okay, so basically this is pretty easy. So you're probably thinking, like, how do I work that out? So we've started with our physical damage. We've done everything there is to physical that we can, so that we had 2 modifiers there. We applied those. So next the game is going to move on to lightning damage, and it's going to say, what do I have for lightning damage? Do I have to do any conversions here? And the answer is yes. We've given it a conversion to do. So what it's going to have to do is it's going to have to do the conversion which we've set. So right now we have 100 physical, 40 lightning, and 40 cold. So now the game is going to do its little calculation here. We still have 100 physical, we haven't changed anything there. We're on lightning now, so it's going to convert 10% of it. So we'll gain 10% of our lightning as cold. So we still have that 40 lightning, but we're going to gain 10% of that as cold damage. So we're going to have 40 cold, and then we're going to add in 4 damage from our lightning, which we've just done there. And then similarly, if we wanted to convert some of our cold damage to fire damage, it would check cold next. It would say, do I have any conversions to do here? Yes, no. If it doesn't, then it skips it and goes to the next one. So it's going to go through the chain, physical, check everything, lightning, check everything, cold, check everything, etc. Until it gets to chaos. And then chaos can't be converted into anything because it's at the end of the line. It doesn't have anything else to convert to. So that's really cool. That's how that works. So the next question is, how does conversion work with increases and more damage in terms of multipliers? So this was a big one in the comments. Everyone was asking me to explain it or add it to the video in some way. So I'm going to explain that now. Let's keep it pretty simple to begin with. So let's say we have 20% of physical as cold damage, which is a similar effect to hatred. Let's say we have 100 physical damage to begin with. So we've got 20% of our physical is going to be added as cold. So we'll still have 100 physical damage, but what we'll have here is times 0.2. So now we have 20 cold damage, which we've created using this effect. So that's really cool. So how do the multipliers work and kind of interact with this? So let's say to begin with we have 2 different increases to damage. Let's say we've got 10% increase physical damage. And we've got 10% increase cold. So that's really simple. We know how those work. That's really cool. So when we get to physical damage, obviously we're starting with physical first because of the game sequence. We're going to check what increases to damage do we have. That's really simple. We've got 10% increased physical damage. So we're going to apply that right now. So equals, and then 1.1. So times 1.1. There we go. Beautiful. So next up, we're going to check lightning. Do we have any lightning damage? Nope. Do we have anything to do with lightning damage? No, we don't. So we're going to skip lightning damage and move on to cold. So now we're at cold. So what do we have to apply to cold damage? So the real simple one here is we do have some cold damage to apply. That's really cool. We can apply that. So it'll equal this times 1.1 because we have 10% increased cold damage. However, this is where it gets a little bit complicated. Not really, but it does get a little tricky. So because the cold damage here used to be from physical damage, the game is going to say, oh, you used to be physical damage? Cool, I'm going to multiply you by physical damage as well. And that's a basic rule of thumb for all this kind of stuff. If the damage used to be another type, then you're going to multiply it by multipliers that belong to that type it used to be as well. So because cold damage used to be physical damage, we're going to multiply that by phys as well. So that's really cool. Now we understand that. And this works if we continue to move along the chain as well. So let's add another kind of conversion here. Let's convert 50% of our fire damage, 50% of our cold damage as additional fire. So 50% of cold as additional fire. So when we're converting this, We haven't done our calculations yet because calculations obviously happen after conversion. So we're going to do this example from the beginning. So we've got our 100 damage here. We're going to do our 20% as cold here because we're doing physical first. So we're converting our physical to cold. So we got our 20% there. That's cool, we understand that. So next we're moving on to lightning. No lightning, so we skip lightning. Now we're going into cold. We're going to check what we've got for cold. It's going to say gain 50% of your cold as additional fire. So that's really cool. We're going to grab that times 0.5. So that's really easy. We understand that. Super simple. Next up, we're going to go to our increases in damage. So this is going to be where it gets a little bit interesting. So physical damage, we're going to add 10%. So we're going to do that right now. Times 1.1, really easy. Next up, we're doing a cold. So we already understand how that works. So we got 1.1, sorry, we'll take our increase here. And because it used to be physical and used to be cold, sorry, and is cold now, it's 1.2 because we're taking both of those into account there. So when we get to fire, this is where it gets really interesting. Because fire used to be cold, which used to be physical, you're going to gain benefits from both of the two increases there as well. Even though it's fire damage, and it's like it shouldn't benefit from it, right? But because it used to be it's going to benefit from it. So we're going to do that now. Increases to that, and it's going to be really cool. Times 1.2 there. So that's really interesting. So the key thing to understand though is when we get to something like chaos damage. So currently in the game there is a modifier which is called gain 10 or 15% of elemental damage as chaos damage. So this is where it becomes a little bit complicated and it's going to require a new example. So what I'm going to do here is quickly clear away this. And we're going to get into that specific example. And what you're going to notice is this is on daggers and things like that in the shaped and elder daggers. You're going to see that chaos conversion. And I want to explain how that works because that's a really powerful but kind of confusing one. So we'll get into that now. So we're going to have our 100. So let's just forget physical for this one. We're going to say we have 100 lightning, 100 cold, and 100 fire damage. So let's add the modifier in here. Let's say we have 10% of elemental damage as chaos. So this is where it gets really complicated. But I'm gonna simplify it for you. So we'll keep it nice and easy. So basically what we're gonna do here is we're gonna say, cool, let's start off with lightning. Is it elemental? Yes, it is elemental. So we're gonna convert, we're gonna gain 10% of that as chaos. So what we're going to have to do here is the game will remember where everything came from because otherwise it wouldn't be able to do those calculations we were talking about. So remember how cold says, I used to be physical. I'm going to convert, so I'm going to get the increases from physical because I used to be that. So the game remembers that. So when we're doing chaos damage here, it needs to remember that it used to be lightning over here, it used to be cold over here, and it used to be fire over here because otherwise it wouldn't be able to do that. So when we're sorting out the chaos here, and we're going through it, we need to remember what the damage type used to be. So we're at lightning right now. Because there was no physical, we moved to lightning next. So lightning, gain 10% as elemental, chaos, whatever. So we're going to do that now, times 1.1. So 110, sorry, we're going to do it by 0.1, my mistake. So we got 10 damage from chaos, from lightning, sorry. So really cool. Next up, we move to cold damage. Really, really cool. So we're going to do the same equation. So we'll do that now. Times 0.1. And then finally, we'll do a similar thing here. Times 0.1. So that's cool. We've done our conversions now. We got the chaos damage we want. So to get our final amount of chaos, if we didn't have any increases to damage, we'd just have 30 here. All right? Because that's really easy. We just add all those together. We get our final amount here. However, let's say that we do have some increases to damage. Let's say we have 120 fire percentage increased. Increased fire damage. Let's say we have 40% increased cold. And 25% increased lightning. Okay, so this is where it comes into kind of effect here that we remember what damage type everything used to be. So because the chaos damage here used to be lightning, we can apply the lightning multipliers to it, which is really cool. So what we can do here is we'll put this in brackets first so that we don't get wrecked by maths. So what we can do here is because it used to be lightning, we can multiply it by the lightning damage. So 1.25 here. So we end up with 12.5 damage instead, which is cool. We'll do the same with cold. The chaos damage here used to be cold damage, so we're going to multiply it by the cold damage increases. So that's really cool. We're going to do 1.4. We've got 14 damage there, and then we're going to do the same over here for fire. And we're going to times it by 2.2. So we got 22 damage there. So really, really cool. Now for our final chaos damage number here, we're going to take all of these things and add them together to get our final number. So this is kind of how the game does it. It's possible it does it a little bit differently. Obviously, it's a computer. It doesn't make sense to humans too much. But that's how you can understand how it works in general. So that's how kind of added damage as elements work. Really interesting. If you enjoy kind of like numbers and calculations and like kind of a lecture kind of style, I would recommend Engineering Eternity's conversion video. He goes into a lot of detail here, but I think it's a little bit too much detail and it can be a little bit hard to understand. So I've kind of got a bit of simple explanation here. If you want more detail, check that out. Tons more videos coming probably today as well. I'm going to be filming a few more and uploading them. So stay excited for those. Stay tuned. Hopefully you guys had a great Christmas. I certainly did. So that was really fun. And I guess I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers. Oh, by the way, if you've got any questions, make sure you drop them down below. I can answer them all there. And if there's any inconsistencies in the video, I will make sure to update that in the description. So thanks again for all the comments and suggestions. See you guys in the next one.